Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.
Mics are hot and Around the Beat is back. Today we are continuing our People series with a new to the industry, Brian Boucher, along with my co-host, Big John. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Are you ready to kick the tires?
Let's get it going.
Hell yeah, excited to be here.
Brian, I don't even know why you're here. You're educated, you're smart, you've done a variety of things. How you got into the tire industry and what you think about it is why you're here today. Give us a little bit of background.
Sure, yeah. It's kind of a sort of an interesting one, I think, in my head. I was born on the East Coast, raised in the Midwest, went to school in the Midwest, and found my way eventually out here. But so the first time I kind of got into tires, well, just a quick step back, is like I always grew up loving motorized stuff, race cars, trucks, dump trucks, like all this stuff.
Normal guy, boy stuff.
Yeah, right. I rode dirt bikes, ATVs, all that kind of stuff. And the thing that's kind of like universal that every one of those things has is tires attached to them, right? So one of my first jobs is I was busting tires all throughout high school at a tire shop. And kind of that was giving my spending money for myself to do things and throughout college and stuff, but it kind of pointed me in that direction of what I wanted to do. So I went to school for engineering. I got my industrial engineering degree from University of Illinois, and eventually that made me find my way out to Seattle and working for the aerospace industry, doing manufacturing engineering for subcontractors with Boeing and stuff. So it's pretty interesting, right? Building airplanes, doing that kind of stuff, really high level stuff. But eventually, though, it kind of wears down in the sense it gets boring. It's kind of funny to say, but if planes aren't falling out of the sky, nothing's changing. And if it is a change, it is a 10-year change. Like if you want to change a bolt size or a rivet size on a plane, it takes like 4 or 5 years to implement. So it's but that's.
And there are a fair amount of engineers in our industry. I mean, it's interesting to see them come into the sales space, and I have a story on it later. But it's almost like you guys can fix things much more rapidly in our world than you can in the aerospace world.
Oh yeah, and that's for safeguarding, right? You can't change things too fast because otherwise you will get planes coming out of the sky. But it's kind of funny I say that because as soon as I leave that industry, that's when all the 737.
It was all you,
yeah,
Brian.
Yeah. So
you
secretly,
running time,
whoops. So sorry, guys. But eventually, So I found myself coming down this way to San Francisco. I had a bunch of engineering friends in the software industries, so I did a little couch surfing. Kind of found some random engineering jobs. Doing in the to find myself here, and then eventually kind of full circle I went back to the company I worked for in high school, busting tires, but now doing their newly launched product for going into more fleet direct sales and service in the PLT space. So I helped launch that in the NorCal region area here. Kind of threw me back into the tire world, in which I always liked tires in the sense of what they're a part of. And that's like the motor industry. Again, it's the mechanical industry. It's like, all the stuff that's...
Infrastructure of America.
Right. Yep. And then did that a couple years, and then eventually came across yourself.
When you went into sales for the first time,
Yeah.
what was that transition like? Because you're coming from
engineering, right?
Many of us as tire techs, then an engineer, then you got to go sell tires for the first time.
So that was definitely a culture shock because I'm doing engineering, which there's no sales. Hey, this is what it is. Here's my data.
Yeah.
This is what we should do. All right, my job's done here.
Yeah.
Sales is a lot more. You can have all that, but there's got to be the finesse of delivery. There's relationship building. There's a lot more to it in the sense of building credibility to yourself instead of just producing an answer. So that was definitely, and being able to build the confidence to go in somewhere randomly where they're not expecting you or wanting answers from you at all. That was a huge confidence need of boosting that I needed to do. So it was a huge shock of thinking it was going to be easy from the standpoint of, oh, okay, well, you see something that a customer needs and you go and try to give it, present it to them. And it's like, people don't like to get told that they're doing something wrong or something's not right with them, right? I mean, you got to be able to.
It's a hard conversation to tackle, and we've talked about it on the show a number of times. We're still trying to figure out how to do it right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that took some trial and error for a while of learning the ropes on that. And luckily, my father and my stepfather, they're both very seasoned salesmen in their careers. And so I had some guidance of shifting into that kind of life and, doing some, reading up on it a lot, did a lot of reading sales books and just, what's the kind of the different literature and what you need to know to shift to be able to get into that. And to use what engineering school, I think any engineer will tell you is like the biggest thing that we go through that we learn is just problem solving and how to critically think. And so you can use that in just every aspect of life. And so when I looked at this as a challenge of, all right, well, how do I get good at sales? It's just like, all right, well, I got to critically think and problem solve to develop my skills.
You're now a commercial sales.
Mm-hmm.
You sell truck tires, you sell construction tires, mining tires, a very traditional role for our industry. What surprised you about it out the gate?
Yeah, so coming from the first fleet sales of stuff of just dealing with PLT is very basic, right? You have like 3, 4, 5 choices of tires of what your vans or pickup trucks or service vans are going to be using. So when I came over to this side,
and that's how people view it. It's like there's different sides of the house. You're on the PLT side, or you're on the other side.
The fun side.
Yeah, and I would call it the fun side because it's extremely diverse. The most surprising part to me was finding of how diverse it was, how many different sectors and pieces of equipment you're dealing with, and then on top of it, it's just like how much more, or not so much. How much more like critical to success it is to knowing knowing the stuff and then the safety on top of it. Like
the prop plane versus 747. If you mess it up, you're going to have a lot bigger impact.
Oh yeah, right? I mean, you're talking like you could have like you're working with a fleet of like for instance on the PLT side of just like exterminators that are driving, Toyota Tacomas, they need a good tire, sure, whatever. But I mean, you could put an LT or a passenger and mix those up or whatever. It's nothing critically crazy is going to happen. But you go on this side and you put the wrong weight rating ply on a steer dump truck. Okay, well now you got some real problems there where he could blow that.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you got 80,000 pounds flipping over down the highway. So there's a lot more stuff that you have to know. And on top of that, be able to implement it and make sure it gets done right. So, yeah, my biggest surprise for it is just how diverse and how many different areas of the infrastructure, as you said, that we're involved in. And I guess I didn't really grasp that until I started working in it. One day I could be doing in the morning, going to a forklift on a port to look at some tires there and offer advice there. The next stop is at a haul truck on a 25 dump truck, completely different worlds.
Yep.
They both use rubber, but how they use it is completely different. So that was like the most surprising and interesting thing for me.
There's a lot more variation than people think. People who are around me here all the time, I feel like we say that we sell tires, but the reality is that we serve 1,000 different industries.
Yeah.
And each one of those industries has different priorities when it comes to tires.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything that you positively surprised you in the industry? I mean, that's something that the variation surprised you, but from the process to the people, something you expected that was true or isn't true?
So the other surprise I would say would be not so much that we're it's primitive, but
You can say primitive if you want.
Yeah,
you can offend people. It's a podcast.
yeah, it's just how, like, I guess, how primitive, I would say, not so much like the operations, but just the technology where you would think would be there is not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, just like...
Give us an example.
Like, you got many other industries using AI now to develop, streamlined processes or, different things with their product. But but everyone in the commercial industry is still doing pen and paper on virtually everything. And
from fleet checks to dispatch to
orders to everything. So, and you think about, like, well, it's just like we're dealing with extremely heavy equipment, very expensive assets, just like stuff that you would think the technology would be there now, dealing with like all this stuff just because of how much things cost, and it's not there. I mean, we're starting to go there, but I would just think that it would be farther advanced. I mean,
I hear you. I'm surprised to not hear you say tire pressure systems.
I was getting to there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you think like the DOT regulates that for PLT, right?
Yeah.
Starting in 2008, every single passenger light duty truck sold has to have a TPMS system, and that is not the same for commercial truck.
You have much bigger tires, much bigger equipment, much more expensive, much more gains across the board.
Bigger safety risk.
Bigger safety
Way
risk.
Bigger safety risk, right?
And yet it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But what do you think is holding the industry back from going to this next, generation with technology? What's the holdback? Why aren't they jumping in with both feet?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of it's a loaded question, because I think if it would have been easy, it would have been done, right? I don't think it's an easy thing to do. Continental did a big thing with the sensors in the tires, and they're still trying, and it has not caught on as much I think people thought it would. I think it's way more difficult in the sense of just like a trucking fleet, because of how many times they are swapping tires on a unit. And it's hard to, I guess, assign a sensor to a truck and get the proper data the way the technology works right now to add into these systems where, you can go in and do a fleet check and you're changing 10 to 20 tires. All of a sudden you have to throw on top of this sensor recalibration to these systems. I think that's where like the difficulty has come, is like, how do you manage that and do that? And that's where I think one of the challenges has been. I think technology is coming with better sensors to be able to do it. I'm surprised. One of the biggest things I'm really surprised with, and I think this is a simple, easy thing that I can't believe is not out yet, is just a simple screw-on sensor to the valve stem that connects Bluetooth to the phone.
Yeah.
Just for air pressure.
Just for air pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would solve a lot of problems. And it's, think of a driver just driving down the road, all of a sudden, ping, his thing goes off, you got a low tire pressure.
There's some out there. There's some screw-on, like Conti has one now. I think there's two others. We need to do a whole segment, a whole podcast on what pressure sensors are out there, even just by industry. We on our last ag podcast, we talked about CTIS, which is all these systems that they're building into the back end of wheels now for tractors, but that's going to come at an OE level.
Yeah.
As far as adding it to trucking fleets, it's that brand agnostic portion that's holding everybody back, right? If Conti makes it, but does it have to come with Conti products?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's again, and that's where it came in the PLT, where DOT was like, all right, the manufacturers have to make this from the get-go. So does that mean now, like, if that regulates, who's going to own it, right? Is it going to be the tires? Is it going to be Peterbilt and Kenworth? Or is it going to be the manufacturers that have to put it in the wheels, or the...
And who really wants that compliance?
Right.
It's very, very specialty niche industry. That would be my comment on why some of the compliance hasn't happened. We're getting more and more pressure to have standardization of technicians and their training. But there's only so many technicians compared to they can't even get drivers to speak English in a Class 8 truck.
Right.
How are they going to build compliance for tire technicians?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think too. Like by now, you would think that. I mean, take weigh stations for instance, in CHP checkpoints and stuff. Is like you would think by now they would have sensors calibrated in the machines to be able to tell you what exact weight you're at, and when you drove through these checkpoints, it would just calibrate to the sensor. Hey, are you overloaded or are you loaded? And it would just say yes or no, and then you go pass through. But I mean, of course, we're not at that yet. You have to drive one by one through a scale.
Yeah.
And of course,
Cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers.
That's right.
Yeah. And you don't get stopped and stuff like that. So there's a lot.
What's been on the positive side? I mean, you're an engineer. You're coming into sales for the first time. You're starting to build relationships. What's been a positive surprise for you?
As far as like for technology goes, and like on that standpoint, I think the major brands I think are doing their part on making an advanced product when it comes to the tire and the compound and advancing the industry there.
Yeah.
I think you guys said this previously, like talking on a pod of like what innovations the tires are bringing forth, and I think from a chemical standpoint of them designing these tires, they're making leaps and bounds. Whether it's using more reusable friendly products to make this stuff, and where they're getting it, how they're recycling the tires, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's that's going in a right place. But when it comes to like the operational side of using the tires, the data that's out there to be captured is very high. And maybe that's something that's going to be AI is going to help with, or sensors to be made to be implemented and used will be helping out with. But
you're saying data from a fleet perspective to make decisions.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that tires are the third biggest asset charge or cost for a fleet, but yet the amount that goes into regulating that cost and managing that cost is, virtually non-existent in the sense of making sure they're being ran good, making sure the tires are right. At least for the asset owner of the fleet, sure, you could do a good job of like hiring, our services and making sure that stuff is really well done, and we do a great job of it. But just throwing out just random, a random fleet owner, they don't have those capabilities unless they get it.
I see that as a little bit exciting. I mean, you come into it and have that perspective. You could also say, well, that's an opportunity. Yeah. Right? Like that's incumbent upon the dealer, the tire dealer, to show them the value. Hey, what can we do for your fleet?
Yeah.
To manage that cost better for you.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it that we often battle with is that it affects so many other GLs on the P&L that we don't get to see, right? If we are a great tire dealer and you're maintaining that fleet, you're going out there doing air checks, you're air bumping it, you've got it all calculated, you got the right tire for the right application, you're going to improve fuel efficiency, you're going to reduce downtime, you're going to do a lot of things that don't necessarily affect the tire budget.
Right.
Yeah. And that's something I think that we can improve on.
Yeah. I'm certainly excited to see the sensors that are going to be coming down, what they're going to be putting in the tires, to make them more intelligent and stuff. I'm excited to see new products that come out that, the big 5 or 3 or, however big these tire guys are going to call themselves tier 1s or whatnot, come out with in sense of products, and excited to see what comes down the line.
Young Buck is not impressed.
He's not impressed. Yeah.
Yeah. I know in my head, there's 1A, and that's probably Bridgestone and Michelin, and then there's 1B, which would be like Goodyear and Continental.
Mm-hmm.
and then probably everyone else kind of floats below that. But it's exciting to see what they come out with every year in the sense of technology-wise and what they're working with.
Yeah. I'd probably say that the change recently has been relatively slow. You know, when John and I probably look back on it, we remember when line haul steer tires couldn't get above 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, today you can get 250K, right, by maintaining it properly. That's huge.
Yeah.
Now
20 years ago, they weren't even thinking about fuel economy.
Yeah.
I mean, fuel efficiency wasn't even in the vocabulary for tires.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know on the analysis side whether those tires are also way pricier than they used to be as well. So you're paying for those savings in a different form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you've told us you're really smart. You know everything. I classic.
Smarter than I am, for sure.
Yeah, for both of us.
Yeah.
Anything humbled you since coming into the industry?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think like we touched on it a little bit before, is just how much more serious these applications get, and how much you have to know and understand what the tire needs to be for what specific application, or rubber, or the material, or the compound. And you're not just dealing with the cost of a mistake that something would bring, but also the major safety factor that goes into these, of why you need to have the proper tire on a proper unit. I mean, anything from, if you put the wrong forklift tire that may be solid, right? So you're thinking to yourself, well, there's no, load ranges on, like, necessarily on a solid tire, but if it's not the right traction type or the right material type, all of a sudden you can have 30,000 pounds rolling down a warehouse that doesn't have the right proper traction, that's going to stop in time or turn in time, and all of a sudden you have a dangerous moving object.
Yeah.
And maybe traveling only at like 4 or 5 miles an hour, but you try to stop something that's that heavy, it does a lot of damage, and can risk some life. And then you go to the way other side of it, which, you go to a mining site with a 29.525, and what that tire needs to be to operate safely there. And these customers are coming to you expecting us to know these things, and we do. But you got to know those things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could put a lot of lives at risk. So that's something that has certainly humbly that I've taken a lot of mad respect in, and to get that knowledge right. From literature, from the industry veterans, really taking in of like what you need to know to be able to be, right in this industry.
I'll give you a lot of kudos on that, because I look back and 20 years ago, if you made a mistake on an earth mover tire, that tire would legitimately blow up. I mean, we don't talk about it a lot now, but there were import tires that did not, they were still testing them.
Yeah.
They were getting sold during tire shortages. Truck tires were put on that couldn't handle the loads. They didn't have standardized specs. Bad shit actually happened. And today, okay, they built these things to such high tolerances. There's so much more standards out there that really a lot of entrants into the business, young bucks like yourself, hey, they could put on a 29.525 on an articulated dump, E3, E4, probably do okay.
Yeah.
Right? Sure, are you going to lose 50% wear, and could you get a lot more? But something devastating chances are isn't going to happen.
Right.
And for you to have that mindset that, hey, you still are putting a lot at risk by putting the wrong tire on, and a lot to gain by putting the right tire on, that says a lot.
Yeah. I mean, load range is a real thing. You put...
That's a quote we're going to put somewhere.
Yeah. It's you can have, a 16.924 that's made for just a simple light range backhoe, at a lower load range, or you can have the serious heavy duty upgraded one that goes on like a cat.
Uh-huh.
And you put that on that one, all of a sudden you got some serious problems.
Yeah.
I've actually seen a 16.928 R1 put on the rear of a backhoe.
There you go.
Yeah.
And sure, is it going to be okay to drive around in? Yeah. But that thing's meant to go into some dirt or some really heavy gravel or whatever and start picking stuff up and start moving around, and all of a sudden you add heat into it and things can get scary quick.
Yeah, they can. One of the question segments we have on the show is BDE. What's your big dog energy? Do you have it yet? Have you found a moment in your career where you went, yes, I want to continue pursuing this?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have many of them. It's a constant reminder, I think, every day. So I'm like,
We'll take a few.
I've been pleasantly surprised of working in this industry just because of how every day has just been it's one thing is different every day and interesting of working with just a lot of different interesting machinery. So, but I think like one example would be a couple of years ago, one of my first customers, they do big articulating dumps, 29.525s. It was like one of my first time like working with that kind of tire. And so I had some help with me. Of course, you should never go into that with not knowing things, but the customer needed 2 of those tires. It was down on a mine site. Obviously, you can't go down on a mine site for long. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving money. So,
Yep.
I myself and this, went to go get the tires in my truck. And you kind of you feel that energy when they load those massive tires onto your truck, and you go, "Oh my God, those things are huge and heavy." And then you go and you take those to the mine site, and you're in these massive things running around, and you get to see all this really cool stuff happening at the same time of these things going on and everything. And then at the same time, you're being a part of that, and you're helping the customer, and you're getting great gratification that you're getting this guy back up and running. And I mean, that was just like one of the first times where I was like, this is really cool. This is really cool shit.
Yeah. When you're the solution to something bigger than you, that's a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when because it takes you all the way back to when you're a little kid and you're playing with the dump trucks in the sandbox, and you're like, oh, now I'm doing this for
like
real.
Playing with Tonka trucks,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that kind of leads me, you're talking about delivering tires, to my next question, which is, what's a day in the life with Brian Boucher?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're on Zoom meetings all day. You look at your CRM. You check all of your notes. You send a few emails. It's like tech, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, that's a good first hour of my mornings typically. I'll obviously depending, every day can be very different. I could wake up and then at 4 a.m. get a call where I got to go and help this one customer out because he's got a down thing and multiple layers of systems failed, and I'm on that last list of like, hey, come help me and do this. And all right, I'm up and running. But yeah, typically on a day, I'll be up running in the morning, collecting and doing calls that, I'll have a planned route probably every day of where I'm going and who I'm going to see. And then that first hour of the day is when it really can change of like, hey, this person needs an emergency, or hey, this person's canceled here.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically in the morning I'm taking calls or checking emails, going through my CRM, maybe a couple meetings here and there. But I mean, I'm on the road, certainly early morning, going to my first stop, checking people's fleets, meeting with customers.
Physically going through their tires?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the job to go and look at the stuff yourself, see how things are wearing yourself. It's a big part of the customer to see that you're out there and you care as well. Showing them like, hey, I'm here for you, and keeping that face-to-face interference and interface with them. I love that part, to go see my customers. You get to see the day in the life of what they're up against and what they're doing. And then that allows me to see, how can I help you? What things in my toolbox and in our business service area can make his life a little easier, and it makes our relationship cooler, and we become, better friends, I'd like to say. So I enjoy that part. I enjoy helping people and trying to find ways to help people, and that's a big part of our job, is going to their sites, seeing what they're doing. And that's
being a partner in their business.
Being a partner in their business is huge. And taking my truck, which I love to drive, and going and picking up product and dropping product off and rolling tires around and getting a little dirty. It's certainly better than sitting in an office cubicle trying to design CNC programming sheets and double checking tolerances on on a
rivets?
same part that hasn't changed in 35 years. So I much more enjoy it.
You got a favorite tire yet?
I actually, yeah. So like, I have like in my head, I have like a favorite tire because it looks really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's the coolest tread ever made.
Okay.
And I would like put it on like any show car, and that's going to be the Nitto 420. I think that tread just looks.
Okay. We'll put the editors will put that up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what does a
Back
Nitto
to-
420 look
Back
like?
to his PLT roots.
Yes.
Yeah. So well, you know that's going to go on a show car. That tire is actually made for like 22 inches on a.
What kind of
Street
car
hot
is it
rod.
made for? I mean, it's a drifter. It's not 22, or if it's 22, it's not a drifter. It's a
Usually people put them on like their like a lowered Chevy SS or like a truck or your
That's your
C10,
pick?
just for cool tread wise. If
Raised
you want
white
to, if
letters?
you want to ask
We going
someone
back
like,
to raised white letters?
no, if you want to say what, if you throw up
Do you
1,000
have this on
different
your
treads, no, God, sorry, it doesn't perform like a heavy duty truck. It's a standard load. But if you like lined up 100 different treads and you asked anyone on the street, hey,
Yeah.
what's the coolest tread? I think 99 out of 100 are gonna say, well, that one looks really
Okay,
cool.
fair enough.
But that's just
Note to
just
Joe, clarify your question next time.
Yeah, we're gonna clarify this in case customers are watching.
Yeah.
What's your favorite
that's
tire?
just cool tread factor.
Cool tread
Okay?
factor. Okay.
All right. Now you put that aside. I think we come back to our industry and our world and what we're living in. I think my favorite tire, just as a universal tire that you could almost put on anything in the sense of trucking, is probably either the Michelin X Works or the I think it's like the XY3.
XZY3?
Yeah, and just that tread.
The X-Works Z, the hybrid tread, the mixed service
All
tread.
position?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I
It's
think
like
it's
a garbage truck tread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a waist hauler truck tire. Just because I love how beefy and meaty it is and how well it performs, of course, but how you could put it on really anything and it will perform well and do a good job. It may not be best to put it on like a Greyhound bus to shoot it
Yeah.
across the country, but I mean, it would do it.
No, yeah.
But it certainly does a really good job for what it's meant to do, and that's the tough jobs, drive on a construction dump truck or on a waste hauler truck. Or it's amazing to see what customers put that thing through, and it comes out the other side pretty unscathed.
You think that's what is a priority for fleets out there is the reliability? Just it's not going to fail. You think that's still a focus?
I think that's the number one thing a tire needs to be is dependable. I mean, I think it's something that people need to be reminded of is the tire is the only points that touch the ground and keeps your vehicle, I guess, afloat on air.
So that kind of brings me to probably one of our last questions: is where does the industry need to solve for the fleet? Where do we need to evolve to? I mean, if you got it, it's a $1 billion answer, but
Yeah, I think. From an improvement factor, tires, I think marginally are only going to ever, I think, improve. Like you said, I mean, like the 250,000 mile mark on a long horse steeler, I mean, that's incredible. I don't know how much farther that's going to get, whether we're ever going to really get to I think we're going to get to the outer bounds of what, we can produce as a product there. So I think what is going to be the big advancement in our industry that's going to become, and we touched on it earlier, is just to be able to put sensors in tires, make smart tires, be able to know when their life is up, be able to tell customers like, hey, that my tread's getting low, or hey, I have a broken cord in me, or hey, I have damage to me, and be able to alert that out to a system without having an actual human go and check every individual tire all the time. I think that's going to be probably the biggest and closest advancement that we're going to see a gain in, at least in the coming future here.
yeah, that's an interesting insight. Yeah.
I got one for you, Brian. For the next new guy coming in who wants to be a commercial sales rep, what advice would you give that person?
or your former self,
or your former
when you
self.
on day one. If this is the onboarding video,
I mean, I think it's expect the unexpected is a good way to. It's one of those sayings. You really, don't be. I think people look at tires as like not an industry. Like you guys said, like we had to glamorize it to make it sexy that you want to work for it, but it doesn't. It really doesn't need that. You keep a really open mind and expect. I think it's an extremely interesting and rewarding industry to come to work for. I think in any other industry, you got to know your stuff. Be prepared to learn. Learn from veterans and stuff like that. And, I use my engineering skills that I use for my past role every single day to help me to progress in this industry the same way I would be if I was sitting down being, as they quote unquote, an actual engineer. If I didn't have that pass, I would be severely hindered in my abilities. And I think that's why this industry is so, I mean, you can come from a very high tenured, major if you'd want to come work in this industry and use those skills. So like I said, I think you got to just keep an open mind on it because it is extremely interesting, at least for me.
Well, I see where you could have that opinion, and someone who's really influenced my life shared that same opinion. I got a call from a major manufacturer, and they said, "Hey, we've got a new sales rep that's going to manage, your region." And I said, "Okay, who is it?" And he said his name's Dave Demo. He's an engineer for us. And I'm like, "You guys are freaking idiots! Like, there's no way an engineer is going to be able to sell tires." And this guy came in, and he kicked everybody's butt. I mean, he outworked everybody. He outcommunicated. Even to this day, I bet if I called him and he missed the call, he would follow up with a voicemail, a text, and an email. "Hey, Joe, I missed your call. What can I do for you?" But that mindset that I guess is built into engineers is the problem solving is invaluable. I mean, you've been incredibly successful coming into the industry. Dave Demo is another example, but that concept of I'm here to solve a problem is unanimous across all industries with our tire.
Yeah, I think that's a part I left out on that is, for anyone out there who's like, looking for an industry to come in and solve problems. I mean, there's a lot of problems to be solved in this industry, and you get to do it for people that really need your help, and they will really appreciate the help that you give them and that problems that you can solve for them. And you don't get that same gratification when you're working,
on a rivet.
on a rivet or on an engineering line where you solve a problem there and you reduce the cost factor by this amount, and your manager just says, "Good job, go to the next problem." It's not the same at all. And me as a problem solver, it's like the greatest thing to do is be able to see these problems, you have the ability to go out and solve them, and then two, be able to do it for my customer. I think is the greatest thing an engineer can ask for.
Yeah. Extremely rewarding, keeping American infrastructure running.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In probably that last 2 minutes, you summarized why veterans in industry are still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see why. Yeah. That's what I mean. Coming to work for our company, and we have all these veterans with 20 plus years here, and that's a good sign. When you come in as a new guy, you're like, okay, a lot of these guys are here, and they're still here, so that's a first good sign. And then as you slowly start to jump into the the pool and going deeper and deeper, you go, okay, yeah, this is why this is really cool. Yeah. The Kool-Aid's good.
Looking back 4 years ago, would you ever thought yourself being in a tire industry? What if someone told you, "Hey, Brian, you're going to have a successful career in the commercial tire industry"?
No,
4 years ago.
I don't think so. I think in my head at that point in time, like I was thinking a little bit more narrow in the sense of like what an engineer in my skill set could do. Like I thought like sales was possible, but I would go down like selling very complicated assembly line systems or some type of sensor, system like in the engineering sales space like that. I would really say that, to sell our products and do it really well, you got to be a good sales engineer. I think it's fair to say that we are sales engineers in our position.
Right on, Brian.
Yeah.
Any last words?
I'm pretty tapped out.
Brian, thank you. I think you brought a great perspective to not only those coming into the industry, but those that have been here for a long time. For now, let's air this one up.
Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world and connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.